2023 meeting of the Select Board. We'll call a roll call. Greg Bendel.
Here.
Kevin Kyra.
Present.
Lou Maselli.
Here.
And Frank West.
Here.
Now I'd like to have us all rise and pledge allegiance to the... Just so everyone knows, due to the heat, I had advised everyone if they wanted to come in business casual, they could tonight. There'll be no transmitting of treasury warrants, approval of minutes. The only appointment we will be having tonight is the consideration for the town manager's recruiting.
Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I can introduce the topic, and then we have Attorney Joe Fair here from KP Law, the town's personnel and labor attorney that is available to answer any questions the board may have. Over the last couple weeks, actually, Susan Inman and I have discussed the transition process, and Susan has done the lion's share of the work here in terms of the information that has been provided to you. This memo outlines a series of documents that have been provided to the board, and then she also outlines various decisions that the board should consider making this evening, and I think most notably starting with a decision as to whether the board would entertain or consider establishing, it's referenced here as an interim town manager under the Town Managers Act. I think it would be referenced as a temporary town manager. I think it's specifically Section 8 of the Town Managers Act. And then second major decision to consider is whether the board wishes to hire a recruiter. Certainly a number of communities that are seeking town manager, town administrators, hire recruiters. If that were to be the case, as noted here, the estimated cost is somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000, and if the board were to choose that approach, it changes the course a bit, because we would need to prepare a request for quotes, seek at least attempt to seek 3 quotes, and then presumably bring those interested recruiters in to a board meeting for you to speak with them about the process, and essentially they would take it from there in terms of doing some of the work that's already been done, but certainly preparing documents about the community, about the town manager's position, and also engaging in the actual recruitment process. So those are 2 key items for tonight, and then beyond that, if the town decides not to go with a recruiter, there's another series of steps that the board should consider, specifically the community and position profile, which was included in the material that was submitted, whether that document is suitable for the board or whether there's any modifications to it. The advertisement, specifically, it would be our suggestion that this position be posted on the MMA website. That's where I think managers not only in Massachusetts but elsewhere look if they're looking to come to Massachusetts. The MMA also has the Beacon, you'll recall, which is a print version It could be posted there, and there may be other places that the board might be inclined to post it. But the various documents that are included here, the position document, each of those documents, the board would want to authorize to be made available if the board is looking to go that route.
Thank you. I believe the first thing we should bring up is input on whether to hire a recruiter or to handle this internally through our board. I'll accept comments and.
I'll start if you don't mind. I've never, been through this. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, have you been through? You haven't been through,
Not through
obviously,
this.
because not
When I
through
was
this.
chairman, we did the town council.
Town council, okay, sorry, okay. Did you use a recruiter for that?
We did not.
You didn't, okay. Sorry, I just couldn't remember okay.
Let's have discussions.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that, in my professional experience, that when school committees are hiring superintendent, that obviously they get counsel from MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. That doesn't exist, obviously, in this case. But I wondered what a recruiter, I'm not exactly sure what they could offer us. And I think I'd be interested to it. I'm open to it. Just to be clear, I want to make sure that we explore every avenue. And so I don't want to be naive and say, I can handle this.
Right.
Because maybe I can't. So I would be interested to hear what a recruiting firm is able to offer us. So that would be my first thought on that.
I agree with that.
So, Mr. Bendel, are you thinking that we should at least explore interviewing recruiters and finding out, like we put out an RFP, got 1, 2, 3 recruiting companies, had them come here and say, what do you offer? Or is it as simple as getting a letter from them or something to say what services they offer?
I think, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to your point, Mr. West, I believe that probably starts with having a conversation with
Yes.
someone like Mr. Attorney Fair, who
Yeah.
probably has a little experience, and maybe just give us some general insight into what a recruiter may be able to offer. It may rise to the level of us deciding as a group that, hey, we want to explore that, and we should put out an RFP, and maybe we should. This is certainly not a decision that I think any of us are going to take lightly. We've done it, the town has done it, twice in 40 years.
Right.
So certainly want to make sure we get it right. And if that means, looking into what a recruiter or a search firm or whatever you want to call it could offer us, then I think we ought to explore that. So through you, I wondered if we could
Yeah, that's what I would.
spot you with the question, Mr. Fair.
Just going to ask Mr. Fair, Attorney Fair, if you sit down and
Sure.
give us his insight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The range of services that there's a few of these agencies that operate in Massachusetts, and many of them, or some of them are headed by, former city manager, town manager types, that are, moved on, retired. And the range of services that they'll provide is, really varies on how much or how little you want them to do. I do think that there are definitely some benefits to doing it from a time standpoint. When you're doing a search process like this, it's time consuming for the folks that are having to deal with it, right? So paying somebody that's going to do it on a full-time basis, that's going to gather, for example, gather your resumes, go through them, vet candidates, present you back with some suggested finalists. That can save you a lot of time. Of course, it also costs you a little bit of money to do that. The other thing that these folks, they're active in the field, right? So they have a little bit of inside baseball knowledge of who's looking and where and what's out there and what sort of trends are happening, or so there's some value that they can provide because, quite frankly, oftentimes we don't know what we don't know. And since they're operating in this field as part of their jobs, their careers, they're going to have that. You're going to have that benefit when you go with someone like that. But at the same time, you don't have as much of an active, I guess, hand and sort of vetting the candidates, looking at what's important to you on an individualized basis. So if you put together, for example, a search committee made up of different elements of whether town government or other folks, those are the folks that know Wilmington. And so sometimes there can be value in doing that as well. So, it really starts with trying to, I think, start from the premise of what does the board have the capacity, or does the town have the capacity to handle, right? And sort of, if you have the time and the energy and the resources to do it, you could look to doing it yourself. But there is a significant amount of value that a search committee, an outside search firm could provide you as well. I know I didn't really give you a very clear answer, because there really isn't one, because it's dictated by what your preferences are. But I think at least learning a little bit more about what services they can provide to you and what types of things that they will do for you might kind of guide the board a little bit in understanding what those services would be.
I'm under the assumption that if we did go that route, that they would be supplying us with the advertising through, whether it's through the newspapers or the social media, and would bring that back to us once they got their applications.
Well, it's a matter, this again is how much or how little you want them to do, right? So if you just want them to just recruit and get you a bunch of, resumes and work those through, and then if your thought is then you would vet them, that's an approach. I don't know that that's the only approach that that these folks will offer, that they would dive a little bit deeper if you want them to do so. It's really just a matter of, kind of an a la carte type of an approach is, we can do this, and it's this price. We could do this much more, and we add on a little bit more, and it goes from there. So I think it's a little bit more of a, what do you want them to do? And I think they'll tailor it to you.
Chairman, if I can, a question to Attorney Fair. Thank you for that, by the way. And just a follow-up question, because clearly we could script the RFP to, ask them to do pretty much whatever we'd like. But just if you had to give me an estimate, the number of towns, the majority of towns do hire a search firm, the majority not. I know we've seen some recent examples like Arlington who did, but can you even ballpark it? Just
I'm not sure I can, because there's some variables. I think some of your bigger communities generally rely on an outside consultant to help them, right? But some of our smaller communities will just handle that stuff in-house, or they prefer to do it that way with just a local search committee. And that, I don't want to speak for them, but my sense of it is that when you, especially in some of the smaller communities, they want that more personalized, touch of who we're bringing in. It's important that folks in the community have sort of, shareholders, stakeholders within the community have more of an input than, say, like an outside consultant, where sometimes they might be a little more wary of them. I'd say in communities that are on the larger side, probably lean more towards hiring somebody. But, percentage-wise, I don't really know exactly, but that would be my best guess.
thank you.
Yeah, through the chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Attorney Fair. If we were to, and I've worked with agencies a lot in this, but I know this is kind of different being town government. So let's just say we did go with a recruiter. Could we go outside? Like, if, could we still entertain applicants outside of the recruitment firm?
Well, it's ultimately your process.
Okay.
Right.
I didn't know with this, if maybe there were guidelines on that, or.
I mean, it's something that you would probably want to
Work out with
work
them.
out with whoever, if you were going with an outside consultant, because
Yeah.
in theory, they probably have a process that they like to follow and how they organize these things, and then all of a sudden, some candidate from out of left field that wasn't
Yeah.
part of this process comes
Yeah.
in, and they may have concerns about their own professional reputation of,
Right,
how did this happen? How do we end up with this person coming in on the outside? So,
right.
in theory, there's no prohibition against it. There's no legal prohibition, but working with an outside consultant, they may want to know
Yeah.
about that up front, and you may want to work that out in advance.
Yeah, no,
right?
I agree, because I've been in that situation where, we've been working with a recruiter for a position, and, let's say, a colleague says, hey, I have someone that's great for that position, and it kind of depends on who you're working with in HR, right? It's like, nope, send them through to the recruiter, or, yeah, I'll take, so it really just, I kind of, like what you said, it depends on, what's going on, but, second question, if I may, I wanted to just ask Susan if she's had any experience in, her career with using a recruiter or not for this type of hire.
Yes, I have. Can you hear me, Lil?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Sorry if you have a little background noise here. I'm on vacation, but I wanted to
Oh,
hear everything. So,
Thank you.
Yes, I have had experience with recruiters. And to add to what Joe's saying, yes, they do have their group of people that they might pull from. What I also would be drilling down on if we were to hire a recruiter is what I have seen a lot of lately, and I know Greg Bendel just mentioned Arlington. Arlington was the search that I priced out at $12,000 to $15,000. They got 4 candidates in the end, and 3 of them backed out, and they ended up having to go to the state to ask what to do because they only had 1 candidate, and they had a charge to say the recruiter had to get them 2 candidates. And I think that's, I guess, where my caution lies with recruiters is just to make sure that I think that a lot of people that are in our business see who's against them, know who's going to get the job, and then they might not want to be public at that point. That was my read on that. I could be wrong, but I think sometimes that's what's happening because they're used to you see a lot of the same people in searches when people are looking for jobs. And so I have had experience with that. I think that what they will say to you in the pitch, and it's not untrue, is in terms of legitimizing something and having other than people from town sitting at the table to say, we're coming in from outside with an expert opinion. And I think that always depends on who you get, right? If that's what quality you're gonna get is gonna depend on what much we vet them and how we feel about them after we do that. What I would say too is they do, as Joe said, it's kind of an a la carte service, but what I will say to you, the things in your packet right now, like the community profile, I did that, just because I have that skill in my background, but that would be normally provided by a recruiter. That's one of the things that they provide. In the interest of time, and I don't have any problem with anyone axing it up or saying we don't want that, that's fine. But in the interest of time, I did give you that copy. Normally a recruiter might create that.
Yeah.
I don't think they want you to, I'm just guessing, if I was the recruiter, and I was a recruiter for a year, normally I would want you to be talking to me about the ad, to think like of going out and doing a little bit of looking on our own and then having a recruiter come in could be challenging because that's like saying, well, we didn't succeed and now like have you come in and pick it up. I caution that against that because I think you have to decide if you're either committing to go with a recruiter or not go with a recruiter. So those are my experiences. I certainly know I know who they all are, and I certainly know how to put out an RFP if we want to look at those services. And even if we don't, depending on the procurement law and what our spending point is, would change what we would have to do for procurement. If we were only going to spend $5,000 because they didn't have to do something that would change what we would have to do for procurement. But either way, I would recommend that we would interview multiple firms if we were going to go with a recruiter.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Didn't have to.
Thank you. And Susan, I apologize for not introducing you. I didn't realize you were online yet.
No worries at all. I kind of snuck up here. I asked John if he would leave me up today because I thought some questions like this might come up. And just as a sidebar too, I don't want to be overly negative because I know there's a positive side to this too, but just recently in multiple searches, Middleton had a search for a town manager, hired a recruiter, a different recruiter than Arlington. 2 of their finalists dropped out at the very end. You know, I don't like seeing that when people are paying $12,000 to
Yeah.
$15,000 for a recruiter.
Yep.
That's just my own thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Either of them.
You did-
Well, I guess a couple of quick questions that I have is that, now recently, we've had 2 assistant town managers. What was the search on that? Was it a recruiter or the board, or how was the search conducted for the assistant town managers?
So in each of the cases where there's been an assistant town manager search, I've convened a group of personnel, largely department heads. I think there may have been a sub-department head, to go through the screening process. You know, it was done internally. We advertised and so on. This committee went through the resumes, did the preliminary interviews, and then made a recommendation to me.
Okay, so if we were to do a screening committee, would it be the 5 of us, or would we form a committee with department heads or members of the public, or how, I guess if we're gonna do it on our own,
All the
what, does anyone have a recommended practice or thought of how we would do that? Internally.
From what I understand, number one, we would select 2 people from the board. And I was looking at 5 residents and then 2 department heads from the town to be the search committee. These are just my ideas right now. But I was looking at something like that, and let them ferry all the applications out, and at the end, present us with, you know, whether it be 2, 3, or 4 applications that they're comfortable with. And I just felt that having the residents involved also will give them a purpose. We're selecting a town manager for the town, and this will give them a voice too.
And what, so you'd have, like, if this was the case, you'd have, whatever the makeup of the screening committee is, they would bring resumes back to the board proper?
Once they've completed their searches,
The screenings,
they
yeah.
would bring the applications to us, and then we'd make the final decision.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, one of the pieces of this that I think is pretty common, and certainly I'll defer to council, but in terms of the screening committee, the purpose of that screening committee is to review resumes, whittle down resumes to some number of individuals who they would interview in executive session, because under the general laws, there's exemption 8 that allows for preliminary interviews to be conducted in executive session. And so once this screening committee completes those interviews, then they would present a shorter list of candidates to the board, and then those meetings, those interviews with the board would have to happen in a public session.
And if I'm not mistaken too, there's no names attached to the people that are coming in for interviews before us? Is that the way it works?
Well, so in the public setting, they would.
They would,
They
okay.
would, yeah. I don't know if you may want to confirm with Joe on that, but.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I thank you, Joe, for your
Sure.
for your insight, as well as you, Susan. Thanks for the insight. I for one am leaning more towards taking it on ourselves rather than hiring a recruiter. I think we can advertise in the MMA. I think we can advertise ourselves in the Beacon. I think we can put it in the Apple. We can put it in the Lowell Sun. You know, wherever we decide to put it out there, certainly have that ability to do that. I guess it's more, like you said, you know, it's more community-based than it is getting some firm from the outside that doesn't really know Wilmington as much as we all know Wilmington. But with that said, and I'll go back to what actually Lil mentioned about can we get someone from the outside that we may want to talk to apply. Well, we could do it that way, but it sounds like if you get a recruitment person, it sounds like you can't do it that way. My thing is that if we got 12 applicants, right, and this firm or even the recruitment people narrow it down to 3, I would want to see all 12 applicants. Because I might want one of those
Yeah,
applicants that they didn't choose
yeah.
to be interviewed by us. But if we go the route of a recruitment, then it doesn't sound like we can do that. But if we go our own route, it sounds like we would have that opportunity to do that. And nothing, I don't think, stops us from direct mailing to some individuals that we may be interested in recruiting. I would imagine we could do that as well. I don't think does the law say that we can't, I know that there's time frames in pro football and hockey and stuff where you can't recruit, but I don't know that goes down to
Blackout.
town managers' positions.
No, I don't know there's any legal prohibition, but the one thing you'd have to be careful about is when you start targeting your, I guess, direct mailing to certain folks, and then you have other applicants, it can call into question sort of I guess the overall fairness of the approach, because you're suggesting, whether this is your intent or not, but to some may take it as a suggestion that you already have your favorites, and that others are sort of there for window dressing, so to speak, and they're not really, you're not sincerely considering them, right? So it just could create it could undermine your process in a way that you're not intending. The thing that you want to be careful about when you're dealing with as a board, and this is a different situation than what the town manager described when he was looking at an assistant town manager, because I believe that's a town manager appointment. So he's not subject to the open meeting law, so he can have whatever hands-on or hands-off the process he wants, assign a committee, they can vet everything, he can chime in, come in and out of the room, there's really no limitations. With the board, you're going to be limited to anything more than 2 members of this board, because you're a 5-member board. Everything has to be done out in open session if you have any more than that involved, right? So you have to keep it to 2 or less, and as part of that committee. They can do the initial vetting, they can do interviews. In theory, they could do multiple rounds of interviews if they wish to. You're going to give them a charge at the beginning as to how many candidates you want back, and you need to at least have 2 candidates coming back to you from them in order for it to be a really legitimate screening committee, and that number could be higher if you wanted to. During the executive session process and in that screening process, those names aren't put out there, and that's the way a lot of folks like it, because they want to apply for a job, but they don't necessarily want their current employer to know that they're looking. What can sometimes happen is once you get to that open session, if you have a lot of candidates that you're putting out there as finalists, let's say 5, that's when that can kind of change for some folks, and they might want to withdraw because if they don't feel like they have a legitimate crack at it. So, having your internal process is fine, but you're still going to need to have some structure to it. Otherwise, if individual board members are saying, well, I like this resume, let's put this one, it starts to make your screening committee look like it's really 5 individual board members are also having a role in it, and we don't want to do that either, right? We want to keep it completely, from an open meeting law standpoint, above reproach. And again, not that that's the intention, not to suggest that, but it's just how these things it becomes a slippery slope, essentially.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
I like your analogy of the à la carte when it comes to their services, so I'm going to roll with that. My initial thought was to maybe go with the appetizer on the menu and just to have them simply look under every stone for us. I don't know if I need them to actually necessarily do the vetting. Perhaps they are having been in this business, they may know 2 or 3 of those applicants that backed out on a recent search and say, hey, so-and-so, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, you might be interested in this job. We don't know that. They know that. So maybe they can go out looking under every stone and bring back candidates, and, you know, if we can come to a reasonable agreement there, price, whatever, and then perhaps if a possible screening committee was developed, and I have some thoughts on that later, but then they would do all that vetting. So I don't even know if I'm interested in the screening, a recruiter doing the vetting process. So maybe there's an option there, where they just simply go out and advertise it for us, collect all the information, and present it. Maybe we can, to Mr. Kara's point, maybe we can do that, I don't know, but I just wanted to toss that idea out there, that since you mentioned à la carte, well, then maybe there is an option for them just to simply do that and bring it back, where we can see everything.
I believe we could also, and I know there are a few around, just consultants, not actual recruiters, but consultants, that maybe we might want to go into that avenue. I prefer, like Mr. Kyra, I prefer that we have our own committee. We do our own research, and we put in. I feel that the town would have more comfort with it, and the residents would see that we're doing the due diligence, but also at the same time, you know, we're making a positive statement to that their voices count too, instead of just the 5 of us.
Mr. Chair. And this is a pretty aggressive timeline as it's constituted, I believe. So it's important that we do talk about an interim position. But I think if we went on our own, did our own advertising and for a period of time, and we got nothing from it, then maybe we go to the recruiter
Right.
and go that avenue, rather than hitting the recruiting right off the bat and spending $10,000-$15,000 for putting an ad in the Beacon and an ad in the MMA website. I mean, they're going to get, granted, they have, you know,
Connections.
better tentacles maybe than we do to try to grab someone, but people are looking, right? I mean, assistant town managers are looking to move forward. Some town managers are looking to move over because the salary may be a little better, or the community may be a little larger than the one they're in. So that, you know, they're looking at those websites, and they're looking at the Beacon. So I just think that approach might be just to start with.
Could I just clarify something? So I want, maybe I should have misspoke, but at the beginning, when I just was asking about the recruiter, in my mind, if we were to go with that, that would be step one. A potential search committee would be a guarantee for me, in my humble opinion. So I saw them kind of in that order, right? If we went with a search firm, in my mind, it would go search firm to the search committee to the board. So I think in my mind, now it's do we go with the search firm, or do we just go right to the search committee? At no point did I think that we weren't going to include a search committee.
Right.
You know, when I say go with them, that also includes a search committee. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I think one problem, not one problem, but one issue we're having is the timeline, and I agree that I don't feel it's going to be met, but that's just my opinion at this time. And I think if we're going to we're going to have a recruiter who's going to screen and then present to the search committee, we're looking at another time delay. And I'm concerned about getting the most qualified person, but also in what time fashion. And I believe that would take us in a longer time period. And I have seen what Susan has put together, and from the way I understand it, this is basically what a recruiter would be doing. But she's put it together for us, and now we can work off that. I just prefer to go strictly with a search committee.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, we don't, I mean, this is the biggest decision we're going to make. I mean, we hire the town council, we hire the chief financial officer, right? And we hire the town manager. So if we don't stay to the timeline, I could care less.
Yeah.
I want to make it so that we're picking the right person for the town of Wilmington.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going beyond it, then we go beyond
I
it.
wanted to,
So be it,
So you know.
and I agree with you.
Oh, okay.
But no, I agree with you. I don't, if we don't do it, if we don't find the right person until the first of next year, so be it.
Right.
But I just don't want to add duplication on, which is adding on the time. I just think that if we put a search committee together, I believe that we get the same production out of a search committee and the way we'd be handling it as if we did have a recruiter.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, yes.
sorry. I just wanted to add, I do think it's an aggressive timeline, but I think it's a necessary timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it keeps us honest. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, if it gets pushed out a week because, we haven't gotten enough candidates or whatever, whatever, we'll adjust. But I think it's something we need to try and stick to, and then we push out as we need to. But also, I do like the idea of, I agree with Greg, there has to be a search committee with residents, period. That's a, whatever, whichever way we go. But I do agree, I mean, with the suggestion of, we put this committee together, we're not getting enough candidates, okay, maybe let's look to a recruiter. I don't think that's, yeah, it might slow the timeline down, but I don't think it's gonna slow it down any more than us just keep searching for, do you know what I mean? So I think that actually is a good, plan. I mean, I personally think we should do our own committee. I mean, Susan's already done, not to put more work on you, Susan, but, she's already done a lot of the legwork. But I think that is a good, plan to have that, maybe we do go, or even what Greg said was, maybe we just go to them and say, hey, could you send some candidates our way, but we do all the work. We do the screening and all that, and they're just presenting. I don't know if they would do something, but, for a nominal fee, something like that. So all good ideas.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, I'm not advocating for a search firm.
No, I know you're not.
And I'm not, please, I'm not trying to go back at you. I just think that this is part of the due diligence, right?
Yeah.
To consider whether we would get a search firm.
Right,
And I think
right.
that's what we're doing here. I think
Yeah.
Mr. Kara makes a great point, that if you're interested in this job,
Yeah.
you probably already know about this.
That's right.
We're already,
I
the
agree.
word has already gotten to you
Yeah.
that this job may come open.
Yep.
So we have that going for us, to your point. And so since people are mentioned the timeline, I think it's aggressive too, for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Two reasons that stand out in my mind that I just want to get off right off the bat is, number one is, we all want the best possible candidate, no question about it. That person's not going to turn around and give a 2 weeks' notice at their job.
Right.
They're going to have to give a 30, 60, 90. Jeff was nice enough to give us even more. And so any valued candidate is going to do the same to the community that they currently work for, or the
Yeah.
industry that they work in. And so that's my number one problem there for the timeline. And number two, the salary, which I know we're going to talk about at some point. We've budgeted for a particular number for this year.
Right, that's true.
So if we want to exceed that number, we need to have to budget for that, or go to the finance committee for maybe some emergency funding. I'm not sure about that. But just something to keep in mind, that if we were going to say we were going to stick to this timeline, which I don't think we can, just my humble opinion, October 31st, we budgeted in FY '24 what that number is going to be. We may want to advertise for more, but maybe we can't because
Yeah.
we've budgeted for it. So it might have to go into, and just since we've kind of people have made comments on it, I do believe we should be looking at interim, so.
Yeah, I agree. And just comment on, sorry, totally agree with all of that. I don't think we'll meet this timeline either, but I think anybody, we probably all, PM some sort of project, you got to start somewhere, right? So we get them in there and we just, we go from there. But I totally agree, whoever, I forget who said it, I apologize, but I think it was Kevin. But the end of the day, we hire the right person at the right time. So, which segues into what Mr. Bendel just said, and, we should probably discuss, interim when we're ready, because I think that obviously has to be done.
Yeah. I agree with Greg. I think that it's already out there, that there's a job opening in Wilmington. So I think a lot of applicants are saying in the back of their mind, all right, let's, I'm going to check MMA every day just to see what's going on. The other thing also is that, I would imagine that that people that are looking for a town manager job in Wilmington or in this area that are from out of state, they're looking at the MMA website. So I think that's a good place to go. For example, like with you, Kevin, I too was on a search committee for town council back in 2002 when I was originally on the board. And we got like 15 candidates just from word of mouth, just got local advertising. We Wilmington Town Council, all of a sudden, I think we had about 7 or 8 people, if not more, that actually met before us as a full board at that time, and we selected, candidate from that. So I think we can be fine with between ourselves and whatever search committee, whatever the parameters of the search committee we're talking about are. One question that I had is that how do we budget for that, and where does the budget come from? Because I'm thinking if we're probably looking, I don't know, 10 grand or something like that. Do we have to get an appropriation through the finance committee, or is that through the town manager's budget, or how does that all?
You're talking about the funds for a recruiter?
Well, either funds for a recruiter or funds that if we formed a search committee and they want to spend money going into MMA, the Beacon, and whatever other pay advertisements, whatever money they need to spend, they need an appropriation to do that.
Can I just echo, I believe Susan has that here. Under the advertisements, like $75 for 100 words on the website. The website of the Beacon issues in September. It's $100. So it's not like big money.
Right.
I'm sure that there's.
No,
I'm sure that there's money in the town manager's budget to find a couple $100 just for the advertising.
yes.
Yeah, I would be
Okay.
concerned with what the short budget would be for them. But,
Well, my comment on that, if I will, Mr. Chair, is that I was just thinking that if we had to get some sort of an appropriation, we should be getting that as soon as possible, just not to delay anything further. But again, I know that there's money in the town manager's budget, but I just wanted to make sure we can use it for this purpose.
Yes, there's money that is available for advertising. I mean, there's postings that are done on a regular basis for other positions, so.
Okay.
May I add one thing?
sure.
Just to let you all know, when we did make the schedule, of course, we couldn't assume any interim, so we just made what could be the tightest schedule possible, and I am in agreement with all of what you're saying. It will probably be much longer than that, done right. I just wanted to give you something to start off with. And secondly, just know that, I know that as Joe said, there's a lot of resources needed to do something like this. And I have already kind of vetted how that could happen in my office, like that Kathy's getting the resumes and putting them together in books for the committee, et cetera. And I know we can pull that off inside, so you don't have to worry about that aspect. And the last thing I just wanted to say to Mr. Kyra and Mr. Bendel's points about how they did maybe wanted to see all the candidates, that kind of thing. You do have the license to write the charge as you want the charge to be for that committee. So they should be working toward your priorities as a board, and that's our voice, that charge. So I wouldn't recommend that you just accept the one I wrote, but to, put in how you want to see things and how you want that committee to choose who those candidates are. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion regarding whether to hire a recruiter or not to hire a recruiter? And I believe at this time,
Do we need a motion?
we're gonna
vote
need a
on this?
motion, whether to hire a recruiter or not to hire a recruiter. Frank?
I'll make a motion that we do an internal search and form a search committee.
I second.
All those in favor?
Mr. Chair, discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would this be, just so we're obviously that motion is not on the agenda, but do we fall, is it appropriate? Maybe I could steer that towards council. Is it appropriate to take that action? Having,
I would assume it is where we're actions related to the town manager recruiting. I think it would.
Hang on one second.
Oh, it's under board to consider, okay.
Let me just pull the agenda.
Yep.
So, actions, so we have two items on the agenda, considerations for town manager recruitment, and then we have actions related to town manager recruitment. It's broad as written, but you're not necessarily, what you're talking about right now is just is broad, it's a general approach. So I think for purposes of what you've described of what path do we want to take, do we want to go outside or inside, I think it's fine. I think depending on how far down the road you go with the discussion tonight, in terms of what kind of, now, once you make a decision to have a search committee internally and what that looks like, this probably isn't specific enough to tackle all of those, elements. Because I think this is just more of an initial discussion. Particularly too, again, when we're looking at the open meeting law, the public may want to weigh in on who should be on the committee. What's the composition of the committee and how many members, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're fine for this particular motion, but depending on how far into detail you get, you may want to revisit.
thank you. Further discussion if I can?
Yes.
I'm going to just respectfully oppose the motion, only because I just think that perhaps I'd like to consider it more than just the 20 minutes we've talked about it here tonight. So it's no disrespect to anybody here, it's just that I'd feel a little more comfortable, got some feedback on it, and thought about it a little bit more, so just my humble opinion.
We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Do I have a vote, yea or nays? I believe I should at this time.
Do you want to ask all those in favor
All
of the
those in
motion?
favor? All those opposed? 4-1. To
Search committee.
have a screening.
Internal
committee.
search committee?
Internal search committee.
Gonna have to,
Now, through the chair, that would involve us right away putting something into the MMA website and the Beacon. We can do that right now, start that process in the various advertising.
In terms of posting the job?
Right. Well, not even, yeah, I mean, just putting out something in general, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the
I mean,
vacancies,
it won't
it's a,
stop us. We don't have to wait for the committee to be formed to do that.
no, this is just an internal, I mean, that, for all practical purposes, the town manager's leaving the position, we have a known vacancy, the town manager could be posting, just as a matter of administration of the town, that now that he knows you are, not looking to involve an outside search team, to just post the position, and start that process rolling. There's nothing that would force you to wait for
Conclude,
my.
yeah.
No, and I don't think it requires a motion to post a job that we all know is going to be vacant, has already been determined and will be vacant at a time certain, so.
Other than maybe getting a copy of it before it goes out, so we can all review it.
Well, so
Or you can
that
review
is
it.
actually in your
It's
packet.
in your packet now.
So there's a
Salaries.
town manager, a town manager position statement, and then the town manager notice. So it just notes for posting, and this was just the date used, July 11th, 2023. If the board is, this is acceptable to the board, you'll note that there's no reference in terms of salary. So whether the board wants to include a salary, whether it wants to include a salary range, all that's open to discussion, but this is the draft that was prepared that would go into the MMA on the website.
Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Go ahead.
I read the memo, and as the manager just pointed out, obviously the salary is blank, so I think that's the most crucial piece of information, if I can be so blunt. So until we have that determined, I don't know how much more notice we need to put out. How we arrive at that number, I don't think is an easy one either, given the fact that we've budgeted for a particular number for this year.
Mr. Chair, just, could we, I totally agree with Mr. Bendel. So I wonder, just in order to get, because we could always update this as we go, as I'm assuming, if we needed to.
The posting?
Post it,
Yes, but just bear in mind that
you don't want to
depending on,
yeah.
once it's
Right, 'cause
posted, somebody
people
looks
start
at
to
it, and
apply,
then
yeah.
they may not be coming back to that
Right, right.
because it, so.
I was just gonna suggest, where it says salary range, instead of putting a range in there, would it make sense to just say, take that out, salary range, with commensurate with qualifications and experience, or something to that?
Right, I
And just
agree.
leave the salary, because most job, postings don't have salary in there, most,
I absolutely agree with
Yeah.
you. That salary range should not be in there. It
Yeah.
should be commensurate on
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I think, actually, even if we knew the salary, I don't think we should put it in there. Because, people have different views on this, but, you got people that are looking for salary, you got people that are looking for a job, and then if they're interested enough, maybe whether we don't hit their number or not, maybe, the benefits are enough, or there are other factors that may bring candidates in, and they could be okay with the salary because of other things. But we don't know the salary, so I think we should not post it either way, even if we knew it.
In regards to salaries, I appreciate the fact that we got
Yeah.
salary ranges from various town managers, but I would like to see what the assistant town managers make
Oh.
for a salary. I want to see what the assistant town managers make in these communities as well, because that may drive the salary range,
Really good
Yeah.
point.
So I think we need to do a survey on that.
Yeah, and
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just because my general sense of this is that we clearly need time to figure these things out, right? We have questions, we're having a great discussion as far as I'm concerned, and we're vetting things out, but that's gonna take time, and not all the answers are at our disposal this evening. So perhaps the conversation needs to be steered toward the fact of whether we're in agreement that we're moving towards an interim, so that we can figure these things out. I think we're kind of,
Yeah.
when you're going around that right now, we ought to take that on, head on. Are we going in the direction of an interim and gonna have some more time to vet all these things and consider it and put together a thoughtful process? Or are we gonna figure these things out and then get into it? I'm not sure where we're headed.
And Mr. Chair, can I just, I know, yeah, in my saying that and asking if we can start the advertisement right away, I just wanted to know if we had that latitude. I don't think necessarily we should put it out tomorrow.
Tomorrow, right.
I mean, I think it may take us several weeks to get it out. I just want to know if we have that latitude to do that, and then at some point, whether it's 2 meetings from now, we say, okay, let's start advertising, then.
I think if I can, Mr. Chair. So, in answering the question of can you, there's no legal prohibition against putting that ad out. I think that the more, though, that the board wants to weigh in, or you want to tailor that ad, or now we're going to put in a salary range, and we're starting to talk about the specifics, that would have to take place at another meeting where you're actually listing that specifically of, town manager salary range, or, because a basic job posting like this to me is, similar to, or a part and parcel of a general consideration for the appointment. We have a job description, we know what the town manager does, so putting that out there and advertising, I don't think is anything that requires a lot of vetting on your part. But once you start to want to weigh in on some of the particulars, then you would want to do that and hold off.
Well, I was under the understanding that I'd have to call for another meeting just pertaining to this anyways, but that this is the beginning of it, and that there are some things that we can get resolved, And then there's going to be a number of issues that we're going to have to think about and address at another meeting pertaining to the subcommittee, how we're going to advertise it, and I agree with Mr. Kyra that, maybe we shouldn't put a dollar figure in there. And I think it says commencement on experience and all on that. But there's gonna be more meetings. But what I'd like to see us do is, at least if we can possibly resolve a few issues and see where we're coming from today, then our next meeting, we should be more prepared for actually addressing the search committee, advertising, if we have to be concerned with the budget, which I don't believe we have to. And then, now that we can get the wheels rolling more and start getting some applications in. I prefer not to advertise it until we're dead certain on what we want to put in, whether it be in the town manager's statement or whatever. Before we start any advertising, let's make sure we have these all corrected.
Right.
And address any and all issues that any of the members have on it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, for Attorney Fair, if we could start talking about the interim, my question is, let's just say we determine, an interim tonight. How would that run? Would that start the day Mr. Hull leaves? Would it start the interim? When would their role kick in as interim?
So, well, just generally speaking, when you have an interim,
It's while they're gone, right?
it's right. You don't want to have two town managers or two folks carrying the title of town manager simultaneously. I think your charter uses temporary town manager, but if the permanent town manager is still here, actively working, then generally
It would be as it's said.
yeah,
okay.
it would be sort of, you could bring the person, some places will bring somebody in, either the outgoing town manager will stay on a little bit longer, say 2
Transition,
weeks.
yeah.
Or conversely, the new person comes in 2 weeks sooner and there's sort of like a little bit of a transition.
Right.
To the extent that that can be worked out, that can sometimes happen. But it really depends on individuals, it depends on, a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
So, but whenever that person comes in, the title needs to be clear that you only have one
Yep.
town manager.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Just one thing I want to be clear about, though, too, is, because we do want to be careful with the open meeting law. And, we're talking about considerations for town manager recruitment, actions related to town manager recruitment. What to do about an interim or not do an interim becomes a little bit more debatable. Is
Sure.
that really a recruitment or a separate issue? So, while the discussion, I guess, at this point tonight is fine, but I think if you're gonna make an actual decision about what you're gonna do with an interim, to hire an interim, my suggestion would be to, since you're gonna be coming back for a further meeting anyway, you're not hiring an interim tomorrow.
Right.
Put that on a future agenda. That way,
Okay.
it's clearly defined, discussion of interim and possible vote.
Okay.
But conceptually, I understand the need to talk about it because it kind of informs what you're all talking about here tonight.
Well, even if, I guess, tonight we know that we're either in agreement or where everybody stands on the interim, I guess, is
Right.
a good start if we can't go further than that, right? Okay, thank you.
I was just under my own knowledge was when with it being consideration of the town manager's recruitment and everything, that it bundled everything in with that statement. But I can understand what you're saying now, that we won't be able to, I won't be able to address things that I thought I would be able to address at this meeting.
Yeah, generally speaking, with the open meeting law, look, it's all subject to interpretation and opinion, right? But ultimately, I can give you whatever opinion I want, but it's the Attorney General's opinion that's going to matter in the end. So we tend to try to be a little conservative. When you have the ability to put something off and more specifically, I delineate it on an agenda, their guidance, the AG would typically say, you should try to do that, particularly if you're going to be voting on important matters. So, again, we're having a generalized conversation, and that's what this agenda item is. But as you start drilling down more into the particulars, you would be better off waiting and then listing them out, the task items.
So, Mr. Chair, just to that point, I think certainly from a timing perspective, the board has its regular meeting next Monday. So if the board was so inclined, under board to consider, for the meeting agenda on the 17th, there could be a board to consider establishing a temporary town manager. There's a number of bullet points that I've put together in terms of items that the board should consider with respect to this process here, the approval of the community and position profile. That document was drafted by Susan. Certainly, we wouldn't want to release that until the board's comfortable with that, so that could be a board to consider. Approval of the town manager position statement, which she again drafted. Approval of the job posting on the MMA based upon the draft that was prepared. Approval of establishing a screening committee, and then that would also include the number of committee members and how they're constituted. Approving the charge for the screening committee, which would be its purpose and responsibilities. Approving a set of criteria for the screening committee to use in evaluating the most desirable candidates to recommend. Those are all things that I've kind of identified as action steps that the board should make a decision on. So since each of those, it sounds like, needs to be its separate item on the agenda under board to consider.
Chair, I have another question. I'm sorry. This, again, is for Attorney Fair. Just, and if this cannot be answered now, it's fine, but just because this is new to me, the process. So we'll go with a search committee, whatever. I'm just going to use this as an example. But, okay, 2 select board members, 2 department heads, and 5 residents. How do we vet that, like, especially say for the residents? Obviously, I assume we would put out a notice and we get responses back. Like, who would pick those, residents to be on the board? Because I almost feel like, would we? Because I almost feel like we shouldn't, so I wasn't sure, but we would.
Yeah, I mean, in the past several years,
Yeah.
The various committees, the inhabitant bylaw, the economic development, the ring committee, but the Yentile
Okay.
committee,
That's common.
senior center. What typically would happen is that each member of the board can choose a designee.
Oh, okay.
Since we're talking about it, if you're gonna go with 9, I would like each member of the board chooses a designee.
Sure.
Then I'm not a big fan of putting a department head on the search committee, having a department head hire their boss. To me, it doesn't really make sense.
Okay.
I would, if you're going to choose a department head, I would choose the department head that we hire, and that's the CFO, who's Brian Perry.
Yep.
And then, so you would have 5 from us. You have Brian Perry. I would consider a Paul Ruggiero, who's the CFO from the school department.
Yep. Yep.
And then I would think someone from the finance committee and someone from the planning board and conservation committee. The committees, not the,
Not
the
The heads.
the person who goes there from the.
Right.
And that's 9.
Yeah, yeah.
Keeps us out of it.
Yep. Yep.
But we can write it, as was said to us, or as Susan had said, we can write it so that we get all the applications anyway. And I'm sure that each one of us is going to be heavily involved in watching and coming to the meetings.
Oh, for sure.
So that would take us kind of out of that beginning process. And then we, get all that material and dive into it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no,
if
I
we're talking.
appreciate the input.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on something that Mr. Kyra said that I was going to chime in on, when we talk about putting residents on these committees, it's very valuable, for sure. But you do want to make sure, as part of your screening committee, and Mr. Kyra touched on it, is that you have folks that have also familiarity with, municipal government, so that you have your financial people, your people that understand how, just even like how town meeting works, or how budgets are run, or the things, the day-to-day type things that a town manager has to consider. Again, not to say that members of the public who aren't involved in town government don't, have valuable input that they can provide. But if you're too heavily skewed towards, say, folks that are predominantly private sector, you're missing out on having that breadth of experience of what it means to run a town, because it's a municipal corporation, but it's not a private corporation. It runs much differently.
No, thank you, that was great input from everybody, I appreciate it.
That's why I was looking at 9 and 5 residents. That way we each can choose a resident, and then the discussion would be after that is who else you want to put on. And I would strongly recommend that we do put on people that are working for the town, whether it be a treasurer, a finance committee, that's fine. But as long as there's people that are actually going to have more input into the operations of the town.
Mr. Chairman?
Right.
With this town manager data form, again, being new to the board, I'd like to see Jeff's, the current town manager, the Wilmington town manager, in these parameters as well. And I'd also like a copy of Jeff's contract, just so, and again, maybe we should all get a copy, just so we can kind of see, up front what the contract looks like. And again, not that we're going to be creating a contract tomorrow, but at least we'd have one. And the same thing goes for Mr. Kyra. When you were talking about doing something similar for an assistant town manager, I would put our assistant town manager's parameters in here as well, just so that we have an idea of how Wilmington fits in this, because you may have somebody that might meet the salary, or it might, that we could offer a commensurate salary, but maybe some of the other things out here, we're not willing to be as generous as some communities might be. I don't know.
Chairman?
Go ahead.
I appreciate council being here so I can frame my comments. So I'll give it my best shot here. So under the idea of consideration for town manager recruitment, one way to give ourselves more time to thoroughly vet all these things is to hire an interim. So that's the way I'll frame it, if that's okay. So we want to be able to examine the things that Mr. West just mentioned, that each person here has mentioned. So I think that I would hope that our next meeting, that consideration would be taken up under board to consider whether to pursue an interim town manager. I'd also like to see, hopefully, Mr. Chair, that we have a discussion, a board to consider item on what the committee makeup would be. There's been some good suggestions. I have some thoughts of my own. And I believe that is something that we should all come to a mutual agreement on, and so that we can put that committee and charge them with exactly, very clear charge of what we're looking for them to do, which would be a very public process, which I would imagine would include getting input from residents, what they'd like to see, getting input from employees, what they'd like to see, and, a diverse group of individuals to give us a good recommendation to this board to make a good decision. But I do think that will take time as I'm considering town manager recruitment. And I just don't think that we're going to have time under this. So I'd like to, and it's been mentioned a couple times here, we can really do whatever we'd like. However we arrive, as long as we do it legally and in public, we can, go about this however we want. And I think we should be very thoughtful, and I think that starts with the conversation we're having here tonight, vetting all these things. But I think the next step is, what is the goal here? Is the the goal to hire a town manager by the time that the current manager is leaving? Or is it to move forward with an interim solution because we don't think we can meet that time? And the only
Yeah.
thing I'll add, because I can't resist, is I would like to see some transition time. We've been known to do that for a time or two,
Yeah.
have some transition time with the current manager. We've done that with other people in our town, so I hope we
Yeah.
could do that as well.
Mr. Chairman, I think with this schedule, we've all admitted that this schedule is very aggressive and probably won't be met.
No.
Yeah.
This schedule says the new town manager position takes place on November 13th, which is 2 weeks after the town manager leaves. So automatically, we've set ourselves up for an interim town manager, even with this aggressive schedule. So anything past November 13th, which is, I think, what reality is going to say, set in, we're looking at an interim town manager to go through, whatever, the end of the year or whatever we're looking at, and we just want to make sure, I think that we're looking at budget time for a lot of that time, so I think whoever the interim is picked, it has to be somebody that can help formulate a town manager's budget.
I think this,
And what I was gonna add to that is that we ought to be very clear about what we want this committee to do and when, right? So like, when we put this committee together, however it looks, we are saying to them, we'd like you to do this by this time. And we don't have that answer just yet, right? And it's okay that we don't even by next Monday, which is our next meeting. We may not have that charge ready for them. We may start to develop what the committee looks like, so that when they're together, then they can know what their charge is. But, we're gonna have to put some thought into, okay, Greening Committee, we'd like you to come up with something for us by this time.
I know when I was reading this timeline, I looked at it and I thought it was just a timeline for failure, really. We're not gonna have the time to do it. And as Mr. Kyra has said, Mr. Bendel has said, Mr. West, Mrs. Maselli, we want the right person.
Yep.
And it's like anything else, you're not gonna just jump the gun and hire the first person that walks in the door, so that you satisfy a timeline. Therefore, we're gonna need an interim town manager, because we know we're gonna go over the time that the town manager won't be here with us anymore. And,
Let me just say something so that everyone's aware, because I deal with it in retirement, where I work, is that I know that Attorney Fair said, sometimes the town manager can stay on for 2 weeks after or whatever, but when the town manager, or when any town employee retires, there is a post-limitation employment that is allowed. So what that means is that, so if I'm not spotting you, Mr. Hull, by any sense of, and I know you'd think about it, I'm sure, but when someone retires, they're allowed to come back to work for 1,200 hours, okay, per calendar year, right? And they earn the difference between the salary that they've have minus the pension that they're going to receive. So they can't exceed that salary in the current job that they left. But they can work 1,200 hours. So if, for example, Mr. Hull retires on October 31st, and we can consider him, if he accepts, as the interim town manager for 1,200 hours to the end of December 31st, which is essentially working full-time. I don't know if you'd want to do that, but the issue I'm getting at is that we're hitting budget season, right?
Right.
And then come January 1 of 2024, you start over with the new 1,200 hours in a new difference of earnings. So he could stay on through the end of February or March to get us through the hump of the budget as we're going through this process. So that's an option too, that the board members have, that
know,
would
just-
have to be,
first,
brought
first it'd have to be
forward.
approved by,
Well, it would be up to us to hire him back as an interim. It would be up to him
wanted
to
to.
accept it
Right,
if he
right,
wanted
right,
it. If he
right,
didn't
right.
want it, then we look elsewhere, I guess.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, obviously, this is obviously now the number one objective of this board, and as
Yep.
Mr. Kara said earlier, this will probably be the biggest decision any of us make in our time here. So we want to get it right, and all meeting long, I've said, the timeline doesn't fit this proposed one, and I understand it was just a draft, and I don't want to insult anybody who had
Yeah.
a hand in putting it together. But, having said that, the second most important thing, and I know it's in the forefront of everybody's mind, is the FY '25 budget. That at some point, that budget's gonna have to be developed and put forth. And so, we can't lose sight of that. So I can't just, it's easy for me to say, well, take our time, and we'll go with an
Yeah,
interim,
it's-
and we'll figure it out as we go along, except for the fact that we need someone to do this budget starting really soon. So we have to be very measured in how much time we take. So I just wanted to add that as a caveat, because all meeting long I've said, hey, this timeline doesn't work, but I want to make sure I'm fair here.
Yeah. Nope. Good points.
Questions on that?
Okay.
What was that now? Well, Hamburg's a big step.
So just to clarify, it sounds like the intention of the board is for your meeting on the 17th to have board to consider items including whether to hire an interim or a temporary town manager. Essentially, the items that I referenced previously with regard to the sign off, if you will, on the various documents that have been provided to the board, in addition to, obviously, the posting. Each action item, basically, I think would need to be on as a board to consider.
Chair, through you, just a question on clarification there. So when it comes to the potential search committee, however that may look, on the 17th, we'd be simply asked to come to an agreement on what that committee looks like, not necessarily naming someone or choosing someone. I want to be clear on what the board would be asked on next Monday.
Right, I would imagine it would be the number and composition of
Okay,
individuals.
thank you.
And then I would assume the following meeting, we'd present each one of our recommendations for the board.
If that's
for
how we
the-
make it up.
If that's, yeah. Which could take time, right? And
Oh.
to that point, Mr. Kara mentioned all the other committees that we've done that before in our history, which, I think there's a lot of merit to that. That takes time, too. You have to consider who you might ask. You have to ask the person, they consider it, they get back to you. If they say no, you're on to your next option. That does take time, but one other thing, if I could ask for a board to be considered at the next meeting is, and this may be kind of awkward because the person is here, but I want to be clear about what would it look like if our interim solution was a current assistant town manager? What does it look like for that assistant town manager position? Do we go without? And I don't know the answer. And I'm not suggesting anything here, but we're on a fact-finding mission here,
I thought that too.
clearly. And so if we were to do that, what happens? Does that seat go vacant? Can we name an interim? Does that person name the interim? Because technically they're the town manager,
Does it
right?
keep going?
Well, no, the town manager picks the assistant town manager. We don't.
Yeah.
Right.
So does the interim pick somebody? I don't think the interim wants to pick someone if they may not end up back in that seat. And again, I'm not suggesting anything, I just want to make sure I have all the facts very clear before I make a decision. So if we could get some clarity around what that would look like, I guess that would be appreciated for me.
Great question.
So a board to consider designating the assistant town manager.
No.
The board to consider hiring an interim town manager without anybody's name. And we just
Okay.
want that
Info.
authority to hire an interim town manager, that's it.
Right, okay.
It could be whoever.
Right.
But then we'll talk to that individual or approach the individuals
Okay.
to see if they're interested or not.
I was looking for a memo, just on clarifying, what the process would, if, let's just say you named, because it's natural it could
Yeah,
be
of
natural
course.
progression, right? An assistant's not
Right.
out of the realm of consideration.
Right.
An assistant town manager becomes, we're looking at one, right?
Yeah.
So if that person becomes the interim solution,
Yes.
what is the process for that seat? Does it remain vacant? Or does that person name someone? Does the board get to step in at that point? I'm not sure what the charter states, so.
I
Well,
was gonna say,
Yeah, so
we
the,
should look at the chart.
the Town Managers Act, the town manager, whether that's the interim or the permanent, would name the assistant town manager. So in a scenario where if the assistant town manager were to become the interim town manager, they would have the authority to designate an assistant town manager. I guess the question then becomes, presumably, if that was to be done at all, it would have to be someone, well, I guess maybe not necessarily, but, the challenge I think that's going to pose is, whether if the current assistant town manager is the temporary town manager, if they fill that position and then they ultimately don't become the town manager full-time, then they don't have a spot.
Right.
So, I think it becomes a judgment call on that person's part as to how,
Could I say something on that? What I would imagine, what I would think about is if the assistant town manager becomes the interim,
Yeah.
then the assistant town manager, if needed, if needs, an assistant, right, would pick a department head to fill that void. The department head has assistants as well to fill it. It's almost as if you have someone in the fire department or the police department that's vacant or absent or sick or ill. The next person moves up, so to speak. So I would think that the assistant town manager, if she becomes the interim, could appoint a department head into that assistant's position, because there are backups in those departments. And then once it's resolved, that department head would go back to being a department head. We're not
That's certainly a
taking that away.
possibility, but I just, I think it's pretty clear to me that the assistant town manager position, it's an assistant town manager HR position. Many towns, as I said in my budget presentation last year, have full-time HR directors and separate assistant town managers. So, the prospect of having a department head, I believe, doing their job plus doing HR and assistant town manager work is going to be a tough call.
But the department head wouldn't be doing their job. That's what I'm saying to you. The department head would take over as the assistant town manager, and then you have for instance, Judge Hooper. Judge, I'm not saying for any.
Right.
So say Judge Hooper goes into the assistant town manager's job. His assistant will take over his responsibilities. And then once that window could be 3 months, 4 months, 5, 6 months, I don't think it would be more than 6 months, he would then go back to the position as the head of that department.
Right.
And it would be, I'm looking at it, would be the same if the assistant town manager slides over to the manager's position. Her assistant would take over the HR and assistant town manager's position.
Well, not necessarily. It would be up to, it would be up to the interim town manager how he or she would want to deal with those responsibilities.
Yes.
Right.
And
You
then
know,
At the end, once the town manager's appointed, the assistant town manager would slide right back into their slot.
Oh, forgive me, because the question is awkward, but I want to make sure
Yeah.
that, I sincerely mean it. I'm just trying to make
Right.
sure I have
It-
all the facts, because
Yeah, I've thought of it as
I feel the responsibility to examine every little thing, and that's what we're doing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
and to your point, Mr. Chair, you're correct. If the board chooses a candidate from another community, then the assistant town manager would go back into, in this case, her spot,
Right.
as well as the department head go back to his or her spot. Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Chair, could we just, I'd love to bring Joe into this conversation for some clarification and what the law states.
There's no prohibition against you having multiple interims, right? So you can have a temporary town administrator, a temporary assistant town administrator. Like, it happens in organizations where, you know, because of one vacancy, you end up having a few multiple temporary promotions. Happens in police departments all the time, or fire departments where you really need that rank structure. And at some point in time, you know, there may be one position when you start shifting positions around that you can afford to leave vacant, you know, not fill, and just let that part stay on the side. But yeah, you could have multiple temporaries, and that would be fine. And then they just go back to where they came from, you know, if there's not a permanent assignment for one of them.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, different topic, if I may, and I'd like to ask you, Attorney Fair, is that if we form this town manager search committee, and they have open meetings, and I'm assuming that at least 3 of us, if not all 5 of us, would be at least, you know, in the audience for those initial open session meetings, should they be declared really as a joint meeting, or how does that affect the open meeting law?
Well, so let's start from the premise that when you have a screening committee, right, so they can meet in executive session for some things, but some things they still have to do an open session, right? So they're not exclusively in executive session. If they are in executive session, then they're in it, and it should be just the screening committee, right? So if there happens to be some topic that they're talking about, whatever it might be, that's more of an open session topic, and they're going to discuss that, you know, once you have a quorum of the board present in the room, you start to, you know, potentially run into situations where open meeting law violation claims can be made. If you all sit there quietly and no one says anything, then generally speaking, not an issue. If people start chiming in and offering opinions or a commentary, then it starts to look like a sharing of ideas amongst board members, and now that should have been posted as a joint meeting if that's what you're looking to do.
Well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. No, because my thought pattern is that at least, I'm assuming that the initial, you know, we form a committee, and the committee's meeting tomorrow night. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm assuming that a couple of those meetings are going to be open meetings as they're trying to figure out what their objectives are, et cetera, to kind of, you know, the whole storming, norming, and all that, just to kind of get the root of what their role is.
Right, certainly initial meetings when you're setting up this committee, you know, it may make sense for you to have a joint meeting with the screening committee, just so everybody's on the same page about what you're asking them to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was interpreting the question more along as, you know, as they get along in the process, and we just sort of want
We're
to
visitors.
poke our heads in and you know, check in on them and how they're doing. It can get problematic for you as a board if we have a quorum of, you know, you all sitting in that room and it's not posted, and then you're starting to offer feedback and opinions to them. You know, it starts to walk that fine line. It's not to say that doesn't happen in various meetings. You know, there are open meeting law decisions and determinations where it's not an open meeting law violation, but it's your committee in this case, right? So it's not like you're going to a school committee meeting, for example, and your board members are offering, right?
Yeah.
This is your subcommittee, and now you're all there, or 3 of you are there, let's say, and start chiming in, and now it starts to really not look like your subcommittee anymore, and it's more of a meeting of the board that they're attending.
I'll watch from home.
Yeah. Right?
Because I'm just thinking by nature, if their committee's sitting in these seats, and the select board is sitting in those seats, just by nature, they may say, you know, hey, Lil, what do you think of, or Brian, you know, whatever, and all of a sudden now you're pointing to, you know, to select board people in the audience that just happen to be attending the meeting. So I'm just thinking that, you know, maybe at least initially they should be joint meetings, even if the board says nothing in the audience, just cover the open meeting law. Yeah.
But getting back to the Wildwood Steering Committee, when we made a determination to choose certain options, in the audience was the entire school committee just about, and some other board members. So did that violate open meeting law? I don't believe so. And I don't believe us sitting in the audience while we have a 9-member committee. I don't believe it violates open meeting law as well, but that's just me.
No.
I mean, you're the attorney.
No,
but
the mere
I would
presence.
disagree with you
No,
respectfully.
No, Mr. Carter, please, let me clarify. It's not the mere presence, right? That if people just sit in a room and say nothing, there's no deliberation, there's no participation in any kind of a meeting, there's no sharing of ideas or thoughts or anything, you're just observers at that point. What I was sort of raising or warning, I guess, is that, and more to Mr. West's point, which is that once you are in the room, sometimes there's that natural tendency to say, well, amongst your committee, I'm not sure. Well, we have some of the selectmen here in the audience today, let's ask them. And that's where it can put you in that awkward position of now we start sharing ideas and thoughts and you have a quorum present. It can put you in a position where it's setting you up for that. If everybody just sits back and says nothing and says, well, no, we can't talk here, this is all you, that's different. And I'm not suggesting just physically being in the room is the violation.
Mr. Chairman, to that point, that would be something we would discuss with them in advance. Say, hey, we may come to some of these meetings, people may choose to go to a meeting, but
Calling us.
they're not, so let's try to avoid it. That's just something you could address up front, at a joint meeting with the committee, that, if people are gonna choose to go to a meeting, that's their choice, that's their right, but certainly, you wanna know in advance what could be the outcome.
Yeah, and I'd also think that out of the 9-member committee, whoever they may be, they would select a chairperson of that committee, and it would just be a conversation with the chairperson, really, if you so inclined, so that chairperson is not having members of the Board of Selectmen being, pointed to for an opinion, so.
Yeah, I throw that caution mainly because when you put these committees together, especially folks that are not familiar with the open meeting law, they don't deal with it on, it's a very innocent thing that can happen in these meetings, so I put it as a caution, about when you're attending these things to making sure that everybody understands what the rules of the game are, so to speak.
Makes sense?
We'll have a number of joint committee meetings more than likely prior to them actually getting to the work that they have to do. And all these issues that we're discussing right now, we can address at that time also with them and say, hey, look, we might be at the meetings. Don't ask us any questions. I don't want any issues with
Right.
any of them.
Right, and just to reiterate too, there is a distinction again between what I'm referring to is the open session meetings that they hold. Any executive session meetings that they hold, we really can't have a quorum in there because
Right.
otherwise
Right.
you're not really a screening committee at that
Yeah.
point.
Mr. Chairman, through you.
Go ahead.
I know we've gone in a million directions here tonight, but my final question for you is there anything we may have missed that we should be considering tonight here in our very first initial discussion of this?
No, I think you've all hit upon the major points. I think the board, has some decisions to make when it comes to how you're gonna run, how you're gonna put this committee together, who's gonna be on it. Some of your charges that you're gonna put out there, but I think you've covered them fairly well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Certainly.
I want to thank you very much. I know it was on short notice, so to speak.
No, not a problem. Happy to be here.
Appreciate it. My concern is, I just want to make sure this is done right, and I agree with my colleagues. This is probably the most important vote that we'll take, sitting on the board. I believe that this is going to Wilmington in a new direction, because it's gonna be a new person. And I just want to make sure it's done to the acceptance of the residents, the town itself, and the board. Do you have anything else, sir?
No, no, not at
I'd
this
like
time.
to just make one statement. Over the past 4th of July, we've had the honor of having our Minutemen present their colors at the parades, at the carnival, but the big thing was that they ended up in Boston. They marched in the parades. I was sitting there watching the news, and all of a sudden I see Selectman West on there, and started seeing a few other people in their uniforms, and I just wanted to congratulate the Minutemen on behalf of the board. You made Wilmington proud, and thank you very much for carrying on the tradition.
I'll send the message back, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are we under announcements?
Yes, sir.
Was there any communications?
No communications. Already
Uh,
went over it.
If we're under announcements, I just want to myself thank the 4th of July Committee. It was a terrific 4-day event that I know took about 364 days to plan. So I want to thank them, Chairman Giroux, and all the committee, some of which were here tonight. I thank them very much. It was a wonderful event, and I was glad to be a small part of it and attend it, and my kids loved it, and everybody we spoke to and were there and joined us just loved it. So it's one of the things that really makes Wilmington unique, and just so grateful that we have a group of volunteers that put a year's worth of work into such a wonderful community event. So my gratitude to them.
And they keep it old style.
Yep.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Mr. Chair, just to echo Mr. Bendel's comments on that, and thank you, Bev, congratulations to Pat and the whole committee for just a great job down on the 4th. And I want to thank Joe Fair for being here. You really gave us some good insight. I appreciate it very much, the feedback that you've given us tonight, so thank you for
welcome.
being here. And finally, I just want to make sure that Mr. Hull has down on his to-do list the assistant town manager's data.
Yes, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get that for this meeting on Monday, but
No,
we'll see if we can, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to thank you very much, Attorney Fair. It's nice to know we have people that we can rely on as fastly as we had to with you. Also, the 4th of July Committee, congratulations. What you do is phenomenal. It was fun. The kids had fun. And it was a lot of work for you guys.
Little
But
wet,
thank
but-
you, thank you. The town appreciates it. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
Business?
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem. I just wanted to reiterate, I know there's a lot going on, so I wanted to reiterate my request from last meeting for hopefully next meeting, that we don't lose sight of the fact that I'd like to take the board to consider foregoing the town manager's evaluation,
Oh,
which we're
yes.
expected to do at the next meeting, so,
I believe that's on the next meeting's agenda.
thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Good night, everyone. We will see you Monday night.